Hello everyone, welcome to your easy guide to cracking the English section of the CLAT examination. In this video, we are going to continue with the same topic as in the previous video. We are going to discuss the various question types and the strategies to deal with those question types. So in the previous videos, we've already discussed 5 different types of questions that you might come across in the reading comprehension and how to solve them. So we'll start with the 6th category, that is what cannot be true questions. So cannot be true questions are not very common, and yet a familiarity with the principles behind these questions can be helpful. So while they are not very common, but it's better that when you go, you are better prepared with all the different types of questions that can be asked, because we never know, anything can be asked, even if the frequency of this category of question is not too high, and it would be better that you be prepared with it. Before I get further in this category, does anybody know what does the word nonetheless mean? From the context, from the way it has been used in the sentence, can you figure out what does the word nonetheless mean? So the word nonetheless mean in spite of or despite of. So nonetheless, a familiarity with the principles behind these questions can be helpful. So even though they are not very frequent in the examination, still, despite of this, a familiarity with the principles behind this question can be helpful. So the word nonetheless means in spite of. Okay. So back to the question category. So in cannot be true questions, your task is to identify the answer choice that cannot be true or is most weakened by the information in the passage. So the question will ask you something like based on the information in the in the passage, which of the following options cannot be true? So instead of using the information in the passage to prove that one of the answer choices must be true, you must instead prove that one of the answer choices cannot occur or that it disagrees with the information in the passage. So you have to find the option that directly contradicts. Contradict means it goes opposite to what is said in the passage. So do not confuse with the extreme options with contradictions. Only pick an answer that the passage explicitly proves false. So I've told you before what extreme options mean. Options with the words like or, none, always. So these are the extreme options, and I've told you that they are like, it's better they are eliminated at first because it's very less likely that they are true. So do not confuse it with those extreme. You have to see the logically or content wise which of the option does not match with the information or does not contradicts the information that has been given in the passage. So you have to be wary of this fact. For example, if the passage states some students like math, then all students hate math cannot be true. Because if there are 100 students in a class and it is sure that at least some students like the math, like the subject maths. So if a sentence is saying all students hate math, it cannot be true because we have been told that there are some students in the class who are liking math. So how can all students not like math? Okay. So this is content wise, this statement cannot be true based on the information of the passage. So you have to look for these kind of options. Okay. Now, cannot be true questions are tricky because the concept of an answer choice being possibly true and therefore wrong is counterintuitive. So, what does the word counterintuitive means? Again, try to solve it based on the context. So, your intuition is your instinct, what you're feeling like. Like when you're looking for answers, there is some instinct that comes in your mind. Okay, this feels right. So that is instinct. So a lot of times in in situations you get an instinct. Okay, this feels right. This doesn't feel right, kind of thing. So sometimes your instinct is taking to you towards one option, but counterintuitive means that something that is counter or in opposition to your instinct. So your instinct will be saying that no, this feels right. But the cannot be true option that is your right answer is counterintuitive because your mind is trained to find the right answer. That okay, this option matches with the information in the passage, so this should be the right answer. But in this question, you have to find the information that is contradicting the information in the passage. So this is tricky. So your brain will be will be trained because of so many practice questions that you've done to find the information that is there in the passage, and automatically you might just choose that as option. But you have to be wary when you're doing this type of question because again, it's very counterintuitive to find the wrong one and then choose that one. So when words such as cannot, or least, except, these are used in the question, they are capitalized. I mean, they're used in capital letters so that your attention goes to these words. For example, in this statement, you can see which of the following, if true, is least consistent. That is least less likely to be consistent with this Elimo's theory about aggressive behaviors in bee. So some sort of theory is there that is about aggressive behavior in bees. So which of the options is least in accordance with that theory? Okay, so the maybe the passage talks about the theory, and in the options there will be four options. So you have to find which of the option is something that contradicts what has been given in the passage about the theory. So given the information in the passage, the author is least likely to believe in which of the following. The question can be framed in this manner also, that given the information in the passage, the author is least likely to believe in which of the following. So these are some of the ways in which this question can be framed. Now, word of caution, that the words like most and best in the questions, when they are used, you have to be very cautious, because many questions that contain these words, for example, a question might ask, which of the following most accurately expresses the main point of the passage, or which of the following best expresses the main idea of the passage. So you have to pay attention to these two words, most and best, that are mentioned in the question. It means that there is a possibility that the other option choices will also meet the criteria of the question, that is the main point or whatever has been asked, but to a lesser extent. For example, let's take an example in terms of if you're having a conversation with your friend, and your friend comes and tells you four things about a person or about your other friend. So you know your other friend. So the person is telling you four different things. So you know, maybe think whatever quality A, quality B, quality C that this person is talking about, referring to my other friend. Quality A could be true, quality B could be true, but quality C so definitely is this person. For example, A and B are talking about C. C is a big liar. So B is saying that okay, C hides things, C is beautiful, C is liar. So a person can be all those things, but liar is something that is for sure. That is the most or the best option that is in line with the quality of C. So you have, so while other options could be lightly aligned with the I mean, they could be partially true, but when the word most and best is used in the question, you have to find the question that is option that is most true, that is for sure true. So if a question says, similarly, if the question says most weakens the possibility, in every answer choice weakens the argument, but the correct option choice is the option that weakens the most. So when most and best are used, you have to see in the option, there could be option A, B, and C could be weakening the question, but most, you have to choose the most weakening option. So be wary of that. That they could be partially true, but you have to find the option which is completely true. Okay. So be wary of the words most, best, or most weakens or most strengthens in either of the case. Okay. So let's get to some practice passage to completely understand what this category of question is. So the passage reads, in recent years, the Indian government has introduced various policies to promote the use of electric vehicles. These initiatives include subsidies for the EV manufacturers, tax incentives for consumers, and the development of charging infrastructure. As a result, there has been significant increase in EV adoption across major cities. Which of the following cannot be true based on the passage? Now you have to look at these four options and choose the option which is completely contradicting the information that is given in the passage. So let's read the option. First option is, the government offers financial benefits to encourage the production of electric vehicles. B, consumers receive tax incentives when purchasing electrical vehicles. C, the development of charging infrastructure has been neglected by government. D, there has been a noticeable rise in the adoption of electric vehicle in major cities. Now pause the video at this point, maybe reread your passage and try to answer the question. So the correct answer is C. the development of charging infrastructure has been neglected by the government, because we can see that the passage is explicitly stating that the government is developing charging infrastructure to promote electric vehicles. So as you can see, in the third last line, there's a talk about development of charging infrastructure. So definitely the C option is contradicting. So it cannot be true based on the information that is provided in the passage. So it is contradicting the statement, making it the correct answer in this case. And hence it feels a little tricky, because sometimes in a hurry, you look for what is the right answer and you choose, okay, this is the option that I saw in the passage, this is the option given here, but you have to choose the option that is not given in the passage, or that is in contradiction with the information in the passage. So be very careful when you're doing this type of questions. It's a good thing that they are not very common, but if they are very tricky. Let's analyze the incorrect options as well. The government offers financial benefits to encourage the production of electric vehicles. Again, this is directly supported by the passage. B, consumers receive tax incentives when purchasing electric vehicles. Again, the passage mentions about tax incentives, so this is also true. D, there has been a noticeable rise in the adoption of electric vehicles in major cities. Again, the passage states this as a fact, so it must be true. So only the option C is the option that is contradicting the information that is given in the passage. Now, while in the previous video I only talked about 6 category of questions, there is another category, that is inference. We have talked about inference, what it is, but then I thought let me create it as a category of questions so we solve the question and better understand what inference is. Although I have dealt with this topic before in the view stamp lecture, for you to understand what exactly inference is. But let's also deal with this concept in form of question. So I've increased the category and I've included this also as a category of question. So inference type question. These questions ask you to draw conclusions that are implied but not directly stated in the passage. So we have discussed before also that inferences are logical conclusions. So I've given you this example that there are steps and these steps take you to a destination. So these steps can be your inference and destination can be your conclusion. So you must use logic and context clues to determine what must be true, because it is not stated, it is not explicitly stated. So you have to use your logic that okay, the statement A is saying this, statement B is saying this, logically it should be leading to this conclusion. Okay, so trap answers, the answers that go beyond the scope of passage or introduce new information. Best strategy to avoid the best strategy to solve this kind of question is avoid extreme language like always, never, must. Whenever you see these words, always get very cautious. Always stick to conclusions that are strongly supported by the passage. Now let's do a practice passage and try to understand better what this is. So the passage goes like, a recent study suggests that people who find fiction tend to be more empathetic. Sorry, people who read fiction tend to be more empathetic than those who do not. Researchers believe that the process of imagining characters' experiences allows readers to understand different perspectives. The study found that individuals who frequently engage in reading novels scored higher on emotional intelligence tests. Now, the question, which of the following can be most reasonably inferred from the passage? A. People who do not read fiction lack empathy. B. Reading fiction improves intelligence more than reading non-fiction. C. There's a connection between reading fiction and emotional intelligence. D. Fictional stories are more realistic than non-fiction books. Now, reread it and see what is the most logical inference that you can draw. Maybe you can pause here and reread it. I'll head to the answer. So the correct answer is C. There is a connection between reading fiction and emotional intelligence. The passage explicitly states that reading fiction is linked to higher emotional intelligence. So we can find that there is some sort of connection between these two. The trap answers A. People who do not read lack empathy. You cannot say that. The fact that the people who read tend to be more empathetic, that means that if you're reading, it is more likely that you will be empathetic, but doesn't mean that if you're not reading you will lack empathy. So this is not a logical conclusion, inference that you can draw. Then B, reading fiction improves intelligence more than non-reading fiction. Again, there is no such comparison that has been made in the passage. Only one situation is given. It's not necessary that the opposite situation is also true. Okay, Now, D, fictional stories are more realistic than non-fiction books. I mean, again, there is no such talk that has been done in this passage, so it doesn't make sense. So I've also brought another fun example. So in the movie Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, again the disclaimer: if you have not watched the movie, it doesn't matter. It's just to give some sort of recall value to the concept that I have included a example based on the movie. So don't worry if you have not watched the movie. Don't leave your preparation and go start going to watch a movie that okay, we need to understand inference, so we need to watch the movie. That's not the case. So yeah, the passage reads, in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, Arjun is a workaholic who initially resents taking a vacation with his friends. However, as the journey progresses, he undergoes a transformation, realizing the importance of enjoying life beyond work. The film suggests that personal experiences and stepping out of one's comfort zone can change one's perspective on life. Okay. Another question. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage? Which of the following option is that you can reach to logically based on the information in the passage? So option A, people who work too much are always unhappy. Again, always mindful. B, traveling can provide experiences that change one's perspective on life. C, Arjun quit his job after the vacation. D, workaholics should always take vacations to find happiness. Now get back to the passage, try to reread it and see which is the correct option. Maybe you can pause. I will head to the answer. The correct answer is traveling can provide experiences that change one's perspective on life. I mean, if you don't understand what inference is, now just see what extreme options are. Remove it. सबसे पहले. That is the easiest way to start. So people who work too much are always unhappy. Again, who can like nobody's saying that if you're working too much, definitely you are unhappy. Nobody can say. I mean, it is very immature way to generally argue or make any argument that this happens always. If you read any research paper or journals or any intellectual conversation, people do not talk in terms of always because you have not seen the whole world. There is always a possibility of something not being right, almost always. So always is not the kind of word that will be used by any I don't know, mature in any sort of mature piece of literature. And the reading comprehensions that you get in your exam are always from newspapers, some good magazines, some journals. So it is very less likely that the option containing always will be correct. So just eliminate it. I mean, in the next video, we'll talk about elimination strategy also. So this is the easiest elimination strategy. Now Arjun quit his job after the vacation. Like nobody talked about what Arjun did after vacation. We are only talking about Arjun's perspective that changed with the traveling. So doesn't make sense. Workaholics should always take vacation. Again, always like just remove it. So traveling can provide experiences that change one's perspective of life. Because we see that Arjun was wary of this trip, but then with the traveling, there was an realization of the importance of enjoying life beyond work. So again, and the use of the word can also shows that it's not an extreme option. It can provide. Sorry, yeah, traveling can provide experiences that change one's perspective on life. So this sounds like a moderate statement. Even if are not sure, you cannot conclude from the passage. This sounds like a moderate statement and hence most likely true. Okay. Now, another category, tone. We have again talked about this also in our previous topic in the view stamp method. But since the question is directly asked on the tone also, so I thought I'll talk about this in the question and the strategies video as well. So the tone based question, these questions, they test your ability to identify the author's emotional stance towards the topic. So common tones include neutral, optimistic, critical, analytical, objective, pessimistic. So tone is very simple thing. When you and your friend are talking, sometimes they're talking in a very excited manner. Sometimes they're critical about if you're talking negatively about the third friend, or your two colleagues are talking and they do not like the boss and they're talking in some sort of tone. When they're talking about their parents, they're talking in some sort of tone. When they're talking about some fantasy or dream that they have, their tone changes. And based on the tone, you understand what the other person is trying to say. So you have to just understand the tone. Like I've told before also, in the verbal conversation, it's very easy to identify the tone. But in the written conversation, you have to look for the words and they reflect the tone of the author. So it can be neutral, it can be optimistic, critical, like I said, sarcastic, any of these. So you have to avoid picking tones that are too extreme and not directly reflected in the passage. The best strategy is to pay attention to the adjectives, that is, the choice of words and rhetorical devices that have been used by the author. So these are the various types of tones that can be reflected in the passage. First is neutral or objective. The author remains unbiased and presents fact. For example, a scientific report on climate change presenting only data. So if there is only a data presented that the global temperature is rising at by a certain degree, so there has been no tone that is reflected in the sentence. It's just data, so it's neutral. It's an objective tone. Optimistic means hopeful and positive about a subject. So a passage discussing how AI will improve future job opportunities. So if there is some sort of discussion on improvement of job opportunities, then it is showing some objective tone towards the future of AI. Pessimistic is just opposite of that. Some sort of negative outlook is visible in this tone. The focus is more on the problems. For example, an article stating how the economy is on the verge of collapse. So this kind of passage is pessimistic in tone. Critical, that is strongly opposing or pointing out flaws. So a review criticizing the flaws in government policies. This is critical passage. So pessimistic and critical can be sometimes a little confusing, but pessimistic is when you have a negative outlook for future. Critical is something is already there and you're trying to find out flaws in that. Okay. Then there is sarcastic tone, my favorite. Mocking or saying something opposite to what is meant. You in India, everybody's aware of what sarcastic tone is. Like our parents ace this kind of tone. They're you woke up so early if you get up at 10. So you understand that sarcastic tone. So a statement like, oh great, another traffic jam. Just what I needed today. So those kind of exasperated statements. I mean, we all have made some or the other time in our life. So another tone could be humorous. It's playful, funny, and entertaining. For example, a light-hearted passage making jokes about common office struggles. Humorous is not very common, but it's easier to identify. Then inspirational, that is more encouraging and motivating kind of tone. A speech urging students to follow their dreams. Laudatory tone, a tone that expresses praise or admiration. For example, the author's groundbreaking research is a remarkable contribution to the field, showcasing unparalleled expertise and dedication. So this is laudatory. Some sort of praise is done of some policy or some person, or some sort of admiration is visible in the passage. Then it is laudatory tone. Or analytical tone, that is logical and breaking down complex ideas, a detailed explanation of economic policies with comparison. So it's analytical is not necessarily a tone, but it's the nature of passage, so it's that. Okay, now let's do some practice passage to better understand what these different types of tones are. So the passage reads, the recent policy decisions regarding climate change have been nothing short of disappointing. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence, policymakers continue to prioritize short-term economic gains over long-term sustainability. It is alarming that leaders refuse to acknowledge the impending consequences of their negligence. What is the author's tone in the passage? Optimistic and hopeful, critical and concerned, neutral and objective, indifferent and casual. Indifferent is reluctant or sort of ignorant about something. So, what is the tone? So, the words that you can catch is disappointing, overwhelming scientific evidence suggest continue to alarming that leaders refuse to acknowledge. So these are the words that you can catch to identify the tone that is visible in author's words. So it's critical and concerned. Why the passage uses the word disappointing, alarming, negligence to express the criticism. So the correct option is critical and concerned. In the first, there is no optimism. There is like it's not neutral. The word disappointing and alarming shows that it's not neutral. And the author is concerned and not indifferent. Okay. Again, in Chak De India, the coach Kabir Khan delivers a passionate speech to the women's hockey team, reminding them that they have only 70 minutes to prove themselves. He urges them to forget their differences, play with unity, and fight with everything they have. His speech is filled with motivational words and an unwavering belief in their potential. So we all know that 70-minute speech that Shah Rukh Khan gave to the team. So identify what is the tone of Shah Rukh Khan. A, sarcastic and mocking. You can't do anything. That kind of tone. That's sarcastic and mocking. Inspirational and motivational. C, indifferent and passive. D, disappointed and hopeless. I don't think you even need to go back to the passage for this one. I think it's quite fairly simple. It's inspirational and motivational. Obviously, he's not being sarcastic. Obviously, he's not being indifferent. He's trying to motivate the players, and he's not disappointed. He's inspiring and motivating. So you get a sense of things now. Okay. So here is a summary of all the question types, including the question types that we did in the previous video. So quick revision kind of thing before we do some more practice questions. So first category is weaken the argument. What it tests, it tries to find an answer that weakens the argument given asked in the question based on the information in the passage. So common traps is selecting an unrelated fact instead of a contradicting one. Best strategy, identify the claim, then pick the answer that weakens it. So for example, social media boosts productivity. If the option says studies show it reduces focus, is it weakening the argument? Or people use it for entertainment. So the argument is social media boosts productivity. It is increasing the productivity. So if we want to, suppose your friend is saying that no, social media is very good, it is increasing the productivity, but you want to contradict that person. No. So you want to give a counter fact. You want to weaken the argument given by your friend. So you say, oh no, it reduces the focus. It does not increase the productivity. It's reducing the fact focus. So your argument is weakening the argument that your friend is making. So that is the correct option. If the question is asking for identify the argument that is weakening the argument asked in the question. If you had said people use it for entertainment, it doesn't make sense. It is not necessarily weakening the argument. Okay. Second type is inference. So you have to draw conclusions that are implied but not stated. Again, inferences are not explicitly stated. You have to logically draw those conclusions. So you have to pick an answer that goes beyond the passage but is based on the logical conclusions that you can make from the information given in the passage. Like I said, avoid extreme words, always, never, must. So if the passage says many students rely on online learning, so the option saying online education is significant is the logical inference. Online is better than traditional is not a logical inference, because the passage is saying many students rely on online learning. That because many are relying, hence you can say that it is significant. That's why many students are relying on it. No, because if there were not many students relying, that means a lot of students have tried and it is not significant. So just few students who like it, few exceptional students are relying on it. But the author is saying that many students are relying, hence it is important. That's why many students are relying on it. So the inference that you can draw is online education is significant. Okay. So tone and author's attitude type of question, you have to understand the author's tone and viewpoint. The common traps could be mistaking neutral tone for positive or negative tone. Look for adjectives, sarcasm, or strong opinions, like that 70-minute speech of Shah Rukh Khan. So you try to see you have 70 minutes and you have to give your best and those kind of things. You have to look for the adjectives, the words, such as in the practice passage we saw disappointing, alarming, concerned. So these kind of words give you the tone of the passage. Another category of question is cannot be true. So you have to find the option that contradicts the information given in the passage. You have to choose an answer that is not directly okay, sorry. So the common trap could be choosing an answer that is not directly opposite, because it's counterintuitive. It gets tricky because your mind is trained to choose the option that is in the passage. But this time you have to contradict the information in the passage. Okay. So you have to find an option that is 100% opposite to what is written. So if the passage says some doctors recommend yoga, so the option saying no doctors believe in yoga is the one that is contradicting the information in the passage. Some doctors prefer meditation is not contradiction, because some doctors are recommending yoga. That means some doctors are like, if there are some 50 doctors in a city and the author is saying some are recommending yoga, there at least maybe one, two are recommending yoga. So how can you say that no doctor believes in yoga? That means this statement is contradicting the information of the passage. And in the cannot be true type of question, this is your answer. Okay, it's a little tricky. So the question type is parallel reasoning, another category. Again, we did this in the previous video. It tests whether you can identify an argument with the same logical structure. We did causal relationship or different kind of relationship, analogy type of relationship. So you have to find the same logical structure that the question is using in the options also. So the trap could be choosing an answer with similar words but a different reasoning pattern. So sometimes what the examiner does is uses a similar words in the options, but the relationship is very different. The logical relationship is different, but the words are used in a similar manner. I mean, the similar words are used to confuse you. So you have to be very mindful of that also. So you have to focus on the logical structure, that what kind of relation is there. Like if brother sister kind of relationship is there, you have to find a brother sister kind of relationship from the answer also, in the options also. Okay. So the nature of logical relationship is important. So for example, the regular exercise improves mental health. If this is what the passage is saying, we have to find the parallel reasoning option. So consistent study habits lead to better academic performance. Same reasoning structure. Eating healthy makes you fit is not a parallel reasoning. Eating healthy makes you fit. Hmm. Okay, I think there is some issue in this example, so we will not follow this one. We have discussed this one in the previous video, so you can look for examples in the previous video as well. Okay. Now, the question type must be true. We have to find what must be true from the passage amongst the options. The trap could be choosing answers that are likely but not necessarily true. True. Like I told you that there can be some options that are partially true. But if the question is asking must be true, you have to find the option that is 100% true, not 10%, not 20%, 100% true. So the best strategy is use elimination. If there is doubt, it is not correct. For example, all students study English. So some students study English is definitely true. Then the question type, main point. Identifying the author's central argument is what this question tries to test. You have to ask, if the author tweeted this passage, what would they say? The trap could be selecting supporting details instead of main argument. So the main argument is something that is supported by the whole passage and not just one or two paragraphs. So this is a trap, that sometimes the conclusion of one paragraph is given in the option and you feel like, oh, I read this in the passage, this must be true. But the conclusion, the main point is something that is reflected in the whole of paragraph. So the passage about climate change, global warming needs urgent action, plastic pollution is a concern. In this case, suppose there's a passage about climate change. So first paragraph talks about global warming, second paragraph talks about plastic pollution. So, and if the option is given on global warming, the main point is on global warming, no, that's wrong option. If the main point is on plastic pollution, no, that's the wrong answer. The main point is about climate change. Okay. Now again, the question type strengthens the argument. So you have to find an answer that supports the argument. You have to pick the option that directly adds weight to the claim that has been asked in the question. So passage says exercise improves mental health. And if an option says studies show 30% reduced anxiety because of exercise, so it is strengthening the argument that how the argument that has been made that there is a visible improvement in the mental health. So this is adding some more weight, that studies have also shown that anxiety is reduced and hence the mental health is improved. So this is strengthening the argument. Okay. Many people enjoy this. This is no sort, that's not adding any weight. That many people enjoy exercise doesn't mean it is necessarily improving mental health. Okay. Now let's do some practice questions. So here is our first passage. In recent years, urban development has increasingly focused on sustainability. Cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen have embraced cycling infrastructure, drastically reducing vehicle emissions. Governments have implemented strict zoning laws to limit deforestation and promote green spaces. Yet, some critics argue that these urban sustainability initiatives often exclude marginalized communities who are pushed further away from city centers due to rising housing costs. Nevertheless, the trend towards eco-conscious city planning continues to gain global support. Now, which of the following cannot be true based on the passage? So you have to find the option which contradicts the information given in the passage. So A, some cities have seen reduced emission due to investment in cycling infrastructure. So this can be true because we have seen that the passage talks about it. The government has taken steps to curb urban deforestation. Again, this also can be true. Option D, there is a growing global emphasis on sustainable urban planning. This is what the last line is saying, that the trend towards eco-conscious city planning continues to gain global support. The option C, urban sustainability plans have helped reduce the cost of housing for marginalized groups. This is not stated anywhere, and the passage in fact says that marginalized groups are pushed further away due to rising housing cost. So they are not reduced. So this cannot be true based on the passage. Okay, so the correct answer is option C. Now another practice passage. Over the past decades, there has been significant decline in the number of people reading physical newspapers. This change can be attributed to the rise of digital media, which offers convenience, interactivity, and real time updates. While traditional media outlets have struggled, many have transitioned online, offering digital subscriptions and mobile apps. However, concerns remain about the impact of algorithm driven newsfeed, which may limit the diversity of viewpoints readers are exposed to. Now, which of the following can be most reasonably inferred from the passage? Or it may also ask, the question can also be framed like which of the following can be inferred from the passage? It's the same thing. So your option A is digital media guarantees readers a broader understanding of global issues. B, physical newspapers will soon become extinct. C, readers today are at risk of being exposed to fewer perspectives due to digital algorithms. And D, traditional media companies have stopped producing content entirely. So, first step, find the extreme option. Option D is extreme. They have stopped producing content entirely, traditional media companies. I mean, this doesn't make sense. There are many traditional media companies that are still doing the work, whether they are getting consumers or not. Then physical newspaper will soon become extinct. Where does the passage talk about extinction of newspaper? No, it doesn't talk about that. Oh, wait, sorry. Again, an extreme choice. Digital media guarantees readers a broad understanding of global issues. Then how can it guarantee something? I mean, and otherwise also, even if you do not go back to passages, now the A, B, and D option are so extreme and so senseless that they just don't make sense at all. But in the exam, do go back to passage. You have to follow everything based on the passage. Sometimes some things don't make sense generally, but in the passage they are making sense, so you have to follow the logic of passage. So in exam, do go back to passage. Or when you're reading, if you read it with the view stamp method, if you read with those uh, elements in mind, you will have a very good clarity, and you'll just have to very quickly recheck. That won't take much of your time. So option C, readers today are at risk of being exposed, because it talks about the digital algorithms here in the passage, and hence your option is C. Another practice question. The government's latest move to privatize section of public healthcare system has drawn sharp criticism. While officials claim the change will improve efficiency and reduce wait times, many experts believe it will widen the gap between wealthy and underprivileged. Access to essential medical services could become even more difficult for low income citizens. It is deeply troubling that such sweeping reforms are being rushed without sufficient public consultation or evidence of long term benefits. What is the tone of the passage? A, encouraging and supportive. B, neutral and explanatory. C, critical and alarmed. D, detached and analytical. So, since we come across the words such as sharp criticism, troubling, rushed without consultation, so you get an idea of the tone based on these words, and hence it is critical and concerned. So, these are some of the practice questions that I included for you to give you a better clarity of how the questions will be framed and how you have to solve this question. Before we end the video, here are your final tips and strategies. Identify the question type before answering, so you have a strategy in your mind. Always refer back to passage before selecting an answer, just to avoid any last minute mistake. Eliminate answer choices that distort or exaggerate the passage, that is the extreme choices. Practice, practice, practice. CLAT passages, they follow a predictable pattern. If you just get a hook of the pattern, no, you will not face any problem in the examination. Solve at least 2 reading comprehensions daily, and by the time your exam comes, you'll be ready to go. And last but not the least, I want to end this video with this quote, that we are what we repeatedly do. And excellence then is not an act but a habit. So remember this. Thank you.